All right, welcome back. This is Professor DeFrance, and today we're looking at definition. Now, definition is something that we will write in a Intro to Composition class, and it's not because it's the most interesting paper you can ever write in the world, but it's because it's a building block of what is to come. And what we mean by that specifically are like research papers and, any good argument paper. It wouldn't be a bad idea to have a definition paragraph. So that's how you end up using this as a writer. You take these tools, you internalize them, and then later on, when you're asked to produce bigger pieces of writing, you're able to produce a definition paragraph. Like I'll give you a couple examples. In research papers, you write about anything. You're writing about supervolcanoes is something that's going to come up in this class. Say you want to define that early on in the research paper. That's an extremely good idea. Or DNA or some kind of complex term, which is what we would define in this other paper that I teach in my advanced comp class, where we write about wrongful conviction. And actually is it the second paragraph? I guess the second paragraph, I asked them to do a definition paragraph on a related term. So this is stuff that is not, you're going to see it once and then never see it again. Like I said, it's maybe not the most interesting essay, but definition and being able to define things is essential to creating and constructing good arguments and good research. All right, so let's take a little look at what we're doing with a definition essay. Socrates. Well, this is in his kind of paraphrasing his idea. Scientific knowledge, as Socrates saw, aims at the definition, at crystallizing and fixing knowledge in the clear and unambiguous fashion, or definition. And that's part and parcel of what Socrates did when he was alive. One of the things that he liked to do was talk about definitions with people to try to narrow things down and make things really clear. So here it gives you an example, defines classicism, talks about how it's important. We kind of covered that at the beginning. Okay. Now in this essay, what you're going to do is you're going to choose one term. Now it's going to relate to the whole class. So I'm going to give you a select area to choose from, and you're going to select one of those types of terms. And this gives you an example of how you might approach it. Basically, you're just going to, you always have a hook. You have some background information. You have a thesis about maybe how we don't know enough about the true meaning of the word. And then you're going to explain it or elaborate on some of the different ways in which we can view this word or this term or this, in this case, it's more like an idea, through a couple of different possibilities. So it goes over these in this lecture. But it talks about etymology. Etymology is something I would recommend for all the papers. Etymology is, you look in the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, you look up the history of the term. That's a really good paragraph to have. So we have after etymology, function, right? What would be the function or use of this thing that we're talking about? And give us some examples and base a paragraph on some legitimate and interesting examples that you find interesting. Negation is defining through negation, so defining something by what it is not, which actually might come in handy in this essay, because what you're doing here, I don't want to skip ahead and then have to skip back, but what we're doing is we're defining an ethical idea or an ethical or moral position. So what you would do in the negation, this actually works well for this essay, talk about something similar, like a similar theory. I'm going to give you an example. Okay, yeah. Say you're writing about utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is the belief, well, it's actually later in the lecture, I believe, but it's the belief that, the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. That should be the goal of any decision making. That's a utilitarian ethic. Greatest good for the greatest amount of people. And it's very similar to, although it is not the same as, consequentialism. So it'd be actually very useful if you did a paper on what does it mean to be a utilitarian, or to have that ethic, and then in the negation paragraph to distinguish it, to differentiate it from something that it is similar to. In this case, consequentialism. Which, once you do the readings, it'll all make more sense. Those may be unfamiliar terms to you right now. That's perfectly fine. So this gives you a sample thesis. Capital punishment is the sanctioned execution of a criminal after conviction. So what I did there is I took half of the true definition of the term, but then what I added are how I'm going to complicate it, how we're going to make this more interesting than just this simple term. But pursuing the meaning through etymology, negation, cultural, and personal definitions provides greater insight into the term. So in an etymology paragraph, you might start your topic sentence. The first sentence of that paragraph might look something like this. Capital punishment as a term dates back to the late 18th. Looks like there's a spelling error there. I'm sorry. I have to go back and fix that. Late 18th century. But it is not only an ancient practice, it is a penalty that has caused many people concern of its ethical implications. So what we're talking about there is we kind of set it up with a, how long ago it existed, but what our concern is. And when we're looking at, this would be the next body paragraph, topic sentence on negation, capital punishment must be distinguished from extrajudicial executions and from the death penalty. So in this essay, you might do something similar, but about ethical perspectives, right? Utilitarianism must be distinguished from consequentialism, and then you'd go ahead and do that in the paragraph, make those clearly define each and show how they're different. For a cultural definition paragraph, it might start like this. This would be the first sentence or topic sentence. Capital punishment is extraordinarily a cultural phenomenon, from what types of crimes have been deemed worthy of capital punishment to how this punishment has been performed in different countries. So we look at the very personal cultural differences in when it comes to capital punishment, how that changes region to region, place to place, culture to culture. So if we're doing a personal definition paragraph, we could start it like this. And here I'm going to base it on some text that I'm going to use and reference to help make this, to help extend my, or explain my personal definition. The text The Hanging by George Orwell and Michel Foucault's Discipline and Punishment provide touching literary and philosophical critiques of capital punishment. And from there, I'm going to go into those two texts and what they tell us about capital punishment. And then we have different types of definitions. Like Socrates said, it is the definition is the beginning of wisdom. It is not the end. Formal definitions always make for a good starting point. You're referencing the dictionary or the encyclopedia. Then it gives you an example of defining paradox. Stipulative, you probably don't need to use this in this particular essay that we're talking about, but a stipulative definition is when you're defining something in a very particular way for the context of your speech or text. And definitely we do want to see some extended definitions here. This is when you're explaining it in full. Let's see, there are just some examples here of concepts, because these are concepts that would do well to be extended and explained. And then I give you an example in the next slide there about dark matter. So we do honestly, it's not a very deep dive because it's just a slide, but this is kind of the beginning of going deeper on dark matter. You would write about this for a full paragraph, at least maybe half a page, to really go into detail on it. This is just kind of the beginning. Okay, and in this section here, it covers definition strategies. Talk about function. Gives you an example. Talks about negation. Talks about what that is. We've kind of already defined that for the context of this. Synonyms are similar words. Negation is defining by what it is not. Etymology is where you're looking at the origin of the term, where it developed. Comparisons are always great to have in a definition essay, right? How is this similar or different from something that is, relatively similar? Other types of definition, these would all be paragraph ideas, essentially, for this type of essay. Any of these could be paragraphs. Synonyms, negation, etymology, comparisons. You could do a paragraph on cultural definitions, personal definitions. That's why we spent time looking at how you might introduce those topic sentence-wise, because you could base a body paragraph off of any of those in this essay. Those would all be good. Like Aristotle says, excellence is never an accident. It is the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. So in this essay, what we're going to do is we're going to take something like we talked about the utilitarian ethic. But what is utilitarianism? Start there with your thesis. Utilitarianism is this, but maybe we can make it more interesting by adding some of these other things: the cultural definition, defining by negation, and through etymology. And write a paragraph on those. And really, this is a short paper. These are 2-page essays, so it's pretty short. There's an introduction, you have a couple paragraphs, and you have a conclusion where you reflect on what you think this ethic means. Thank you.